Plato's divided line, is making that hard distinction between the two. You see, nowadays we think of knowledge as just a subset of beliefs, beliefs that meet certain conditions. But from Plato on through Kant, no, these are two very separate things. Knowledge involves either direct awareness of some sort as a result of dialectic or intuition of what is axiomatic, self-evident, or else demonstrative knowledge from such first principles. You see, that's the notion of knowledge. Belief lacks that.
Is there distinction something that up to time everyone sort of disappears and then after time?
No, it's not as if history said, thus endeth the Platonic division between knowledge and belief, and they'll never look at it again. No. Wish it were that easy. Let's say that from Hume onwards, there is a weakening of the line between the two, so that you can't assume that people are using the terms in the completely separate sense that you get in the Platonic tradition. No. There was a development in epistemology in the 1960s, where we were defining knowledge as justified true belief. So knowledge is a subset of belief. And since the 60s, through the 70s and the 80s, people have been working on what are justification conditions. Under what conditions can you say you are justified in belief? Something's true. But this is because of the weakening of the sense of knowledge. Okay, let's see, what's the next one? A priori and a posteriori. Yeah, and there you can pick it up in your reading around 369 to 373, in that general region. We're familiar already with the terms a priori and a posteriori simply because they have been so widely used, not so much by Kant's predecessors as by people talking about them. In Hume, the distinction was between relations of ideas and matters of fact. And in the subsequent empiricist tradition, Hume's distinction remains pretty firm. The relations of ideas are simply analytic. They have the form simply of logical truths, such as A equals A is not non-A. A bachelor is an unmarried male. Cat is a cat. Wherever you've got logical identity. Okay, logical truths. Relations of ideas. If you know the ideas, you can work out such relationships. So he thought of mathematics as belonging in relations of ideas. Because granted, the axioms, you work out relationships between axioms, the corollaries, in proving theorems. And it's all knowledge derived from basic concepts interrelated. Now, matters of fact are described more in synthetic fashion. That is to say, they could be false. They're not necessarily true, they're contingent truths. They could be false. And they could be false because the predicate adds something that isn't already logically tied to the subject. Well, bachelors are miserable, you see. It may be true, but there's no logical connection between the two. So that you've got there synthetic truths, what sometimes is called factual truth, sometimes material truths. That is to say, they've got subject matter. So you've got these two, and in the latter you would have all the sciences. Physical science, life sciences, psychological science, what then would be called mental science. You see? So all the sciences would fit there. And, of course, metaphysics, which was taken to be a science. It was Hume who told us, no, it's not. It's no science. It doesn't yield knowledge. But prior to Hume, yeah, this is the way it would have been considered. Now, you can see from this the definitions begin to appear. Analytic, yes, the predicate is logically contained in the subject, and the proposition just unpacks it. Okay, necessarily true. Do you understand that? Predicate, what's predicated of the subject, is logically part of the subject. Okay? 3 plus 5 equals 8. Bachelors are unmarried males. So forth. Synthetic propositions, the predicate is not contained in the subject, but adds to the subject. Okay? Now, the distinctive thing that Kant does, however, is to bring to bear on that distinction the further distinction between a priori and a posteriori. Now, the term a posteriori is the easier one to get hold of, meaning simply dependent on experience. Dependent on experience. Posterior to experience. And Kant, therefore, was quick to say that there are sure synthetic a posteriori statements, propositions. Yeah. There are things that we say that seem to be based simply on experience. Synthetic a posteriori. And likewise, he wasn't saying anything new when he said we have analytic a priori propositions. A priori means, in its simplest terms, independently of experience. And obviously, analytic relations of ideas are independently of experience. You don't have to count your fingers if you really understand the concepts of 2 and 1 to understand that 2 plus 1 equals 3. It's logically necessary. So in those two regards, no problem. The problem comes when he adds to that the notion of synthetic a priori, which seems to be mixing apples and pears. You see. Peaches and bananas. Synthetic a priori. Now, in order to see more clearly what he's doing in this, let's get what he means by a priori a little more precisely. I guess in most of our introductory courses we content ourselves with the statement that a priori means independently of experience. But Kant wasn't content with that. Kant wants to say that a priori knowledge is going to be universal and necessary. Universal and necessary. So that a priori truths are going to be universally true. Not just relative to some particular situation. Universally true. And necessarily true. They couldn't possibly be false. Yeah. Because it's not just the analytic which is necessarily true, but the a priori is necessarily true. You see? So you've got two kinds of a priori knowledge, not just one. You've got the analytic a priori, like tautologies, and you've got the synthetic a priori, like physics, perhaps metaphysics. Certainly mathematics, which he pulls down there. Yeah, because the synthetic a priori for Kant involves math, physics, natural science that is, metaphysics. Doing anything more than just talking about phenomena. Math, physics, metaphysics. Yeah. And you'll find that in the critique of pure reason there are three major sections in which he comes at these. There is a first one which he calls the transcendental aesthetic, where he explains the basis for mathematical knowledge. Aesthetic? Well, hold the phone. Don't hold your breath. Yeah, aesthetic in German has to do with sense perception, with any kind of conscious awareness. Okay. So, transcendental aesthetic. Then that's followed by the transcendental analytic, which introduces him to knowledge of physics, principles of physics. And then the transcendental dialectic, where he takes a look at, metaphysics. And it's the transcendental dialectic that has those three parts dealing with rational or philosophical psychology, rational or philosophical cosmology, rational or philosophical theology. And you can check that out in the table of contents, which our editor gives us very helpfully on page 366. You notice? Take a look at that. On 366, he has first part, transcendental aesthetic, second part, transcendental logic, division 1, transcendental analytic, division 2, transcendental dialectic. Well, his point is then that we have rational knowledge, universal and necessary, or the question is whether we do, really have universal and necessary knowledge a priori that is synthetic. That is to say, that adds to the meaning of the terms. Is it possible to have factual knowledge, knowledge of matters of fact, a priori? That's the issue. Well, wasn't that his project to ask that? Is metaphysics possible on an a priori basis? Metaphysics would involve synthetic knowledge, knowledge of facts about reality. So this is the kind of conceptual apparatus that he's developing for that in mind. Now, to pin this down a little bit, look, would you, at page 369. 369. Top of the second column. Those of you who did not bring the anthology, you'll need it throughout Kant. Okay? And forever thereafter. 369, the second column at the top. My question is, what can we hope to achieve with reason when all the material and assistance of experience is taken away? Independently of experience, what can we achieve? A priori knowledge. Okay? Then, halfway down that column, he says there are two essential demands addressed to an author who ventures on this undertaking. First, with regards to certainty. Okay? And halfway through that paragraph, he says every kind of knowledge that professes to be certain, a priori, proclaims that it means to be taken for absolutely necessary. Absolutely necessary. Pure knowledge a priori, which is the measure of all apodictic philosophical certainty. Apodictic? Yes, proven, demonstrable, logically necessary. And over on 371, very bottom of the second column, general truths which bear the character of inward necessity must be independent of experience, clear, certain to themselves. They're therefore called knowledge a priori. But notice he calls them general truths. You see, they have the logically universal form. All. Yeah? Not just some, not just local, but all. So universal and necessary, a criteria involved in the a priori. And at the top of 372, halfway through that first, well, 6 lines into that first paragraph, even if we remove from experience everything that belongs to the senses, there remain certain original concepts and judgments derived from them, which must have had their origin entirely a priori, independent of all experience. So pretty evident what he's after, and at the top of 373, first column, he gives an illustration from mathematics, and I'll leave you to play with that. Okay. The phrase synthetic a priori is introduced on 374. Synthetic a priori, 374, second column, at the top. In synthetic judgments a priori, okay, empirical help is wanting. If I want to go beyond the concept A to find another concept B, where is there anything on which I may rest and through which a synthesis A and B might become possible? Considering I cannot have the advantage of looking about in the field of experience. Take the proposition, and here's Hume's crucial one. The proposition that all which happens has its cause. Take that. In the concept of something that happens, I no doubt conceive of something existing preceded by time, and from this certain analytic judgments may be deduced. But the concept of cause is outside that. Yeah, I undoubtedly have the idea of something preceding. Sure, conjunctions, regularities, constant conjunctions. Yeah, he agrees with Hume, we have that. All right. But we have no concept of cause. And this indicates something different from just what happens, and it's not contained in the representation of what happens. So, how about the cause-effect connection? Okay. Any questions, comments? Okay, transcendental method. And you notice that in that context the term transcendental is used several times. I call knowledge transcendental, he says on 375, that's occupied not with objects but with a priori concepts. And that's a pretty good definition. Don't confuse transcendental with transcendent. Now, if you think like a theologian thinks, the word transcendental immediately triggers the thought of a God out there somewhere. A God who transcends this creation and acts, as it were, from outside it. Transcendent. The term transcendental doesn't mean anything of the sort. Now, if you think not like a theologian, but like somebody in American literature, you're familiar with the term transcendentalism, where the term transcendental does not refer to something out there, but something in here and under here and around here and pervading all. You see, American transcendentalism was the view that the human spirit is a creative, expressive power, but not confined to me. It's the creative spirit throughout things that operates in and through my creative spirit. Sort of a pan-entheism. You see? In that every human soul, mind, spirit participates in this world spirit. You get that in Emerson. Transcendentalism. Transcendentalism was the American version of German Romanticism in the 19th century, with its pantheistic or pan-entheistic tendency. Now, the point is, and incidentally, there wouldn't have been any transcendentalism or romanticism apart from Kant. He's the philosophical transition that made that possible. He had the term before they did. They just stole it, borrowed it, went to piggyback on it. But you see, if you then have the notion of transcendentalism, you can work back to the seed of that idea in what Kant is talking about. He's talking about the inner resources of the human spirit, the inner resources of the human mind. What is it that reason brings a priori to the quest for knowledge? And the transcendental method is the method of getting at these inner resources that the human mind brings. That's why I say forget for a moment the notion of a transcendent. Not out there, in here is where transcendental focuses. So if we say then that critical philosophy is an attempt to critique the tradition, you see, by asking what are the resources that the mind brings a priori, then obviously the transcendental method is the method you want. The method of getting at those inner resources. You see. Are there certain universal presuppositions which every human being brings to the quest for knowledge? You see, that's the kind of question he's asking. Except the presupposition seems to imply some theory, some proposition, something more than what Kant's thinking about, which is a concept. Are there any universal concepts? Now, having said that, be careful. Because he's not talking about what we've learned to think of since Plato as innate ideas. No. An innate idea is a pre-formed idea that's already in your mind and you can recollect with. Or in Descartes' language, an innate idea is something which is self-evident, which pops up in the mind, clear and distinct. You think? It's sort of a prefabricated idea that you've already got. But the kind of a priori concept that Kant is after is not a full-blown concept. It's not a clear idea. It's not something self-evident. It's more of a blueprint. Or more of a framework for your thinking. It's more of a grid through which you will sift what comes, or a mold into which you will pour experience. You see? Now, my usual illustration of this, some of you have heard, is of an ice cube tray, with those neat dividers. And you pour the water in, and lo and behold, after a while, it comes out with nice, pretty cubes. You can get a handle on those. So it's hard to hold the water in your hand. J. Woods, I think, is of a crazy puppy. Play-Doh, yeah, a Play-Doh thing where you squeeze the Play-Doh out through the thing in all sorts of pretty animal shapes. Well, you can think of it as a cookie syringe, making Christmas cookies, squeezing the stuff through the nozzles, and out come all sorts of star-shaped cookies and all sorts of other fancy things. No, it's an a priori structure. It's like a structure, a framework. Yeah. Change the metaphor. It's as if we have an a priori lens that brings things into focus. Yeah, you're right. Lens. When I shave in the morning, I have my glasses off because they get steamed up. But when it comes to doing the hairs just below the sideburns, I have to put them back on because I can't see what I'm doing. You know, I can go by feel all the rest of the way. But being half as blind as a bat is completely blind, without the glasses, you know, I have to have. Well, you can't know, think, without the lens. You see, it's the sort of thing Kant say. Everybody has the same lens. Go to the dime store and get your specs. No, you don't need to. You come with it already built in. You see. So that it's this a priori structure that he's trying to uncover with the transcendental method.